Before we dive into showing you how you can use your ActivPanel version 5, 6, or 7, let's address one housekeeping task, updating. To make sure that these concepts we are going to model for you work smoothly in your classroom, you are going to need the most recent update. To update your ActivConnect-G or OPS-G for a version 5 or 6 ActivPanel, the first thing you're going to want to do is change your source to the corresponding HDMI where that lives. Once you've done that, you should see this screen here, that famous wheel of apps and that pink menu button. And then you're going to go into your All Apps, bottom corner, 4 squares in the circle, and make sure that you are in the Settings category. So if you happen to be on the Communication one, hop down here to the gear, make sure you're in the one that says Settings. From there, you're going to choose the Update app. This green one says Update. Choose that. And then you're going to choose Online Update. From there, you're going to follow any on-screen prompts that prompt you to download and then install the update for the ActivConnect or OPS-G. Now, if you've done this a long time ago and haven't done it since then, you may have a couple of those to run before you see that message that you saw on mine saying that you're updated to the latest version. So make sure you build in a little time to do that in case you need to do 1, 2, or maybe 3 updates. That way you have the latest version and you're ready to roll. To update on an ActivPanel version 7, it looks a little bit different. What you're going to want to do is go to your unified menu, choose the locker, and then you're looking for the Update app. Still greenish color, so a little bit of consistency there. But when you choose that, you're going to hit Check for Updates. If you have any updates to run, follow the on-screen prompts to download and install the update. If not, you'll get a message like you saw on mine that says you have the latest version and you're good to go. Again, checking for updates is crucial to making sure that your hardware runs smooth and you're working with the latest features. And just as a reminder, you'll want to periodically check for updates throughout the year. Now that we've got our housekeeping task out of the way, let's get to teaching. In a typical classroom setting, I would use the ActivPanel to display my content as I go through my lesson. I know what you're thinking. All or some of my students are working remotely. I can't do that, right? Wrong. Utilizing your district's web conferencing platform and the ActivPanel, you can still bring your lessons to your students in a similar fashion that you would if they were face-to-face with you. We'll show you what that looks like. We'll discuss 2 ways you may want to utilize the ActivPanel to support your distance learning needs. Option 1, teaching from the ActivPanel, no teacher computer. Option 2, teaching with the ActivPanel and your teacher computer. You can see that I have no teacher computer connected. That means on a version 7, I'm teaching directly from the panel, or on a version 5 or 6, from my Android ActivConnect-G or OPS-G. Using the Google Play Store, I have downloaded the app for the web conferencing service that my school uses. In this example, that is going to be Google Meet, but you can also use things like Zoom, WebEx, or whatever service your school uses. So let's say that I'm teaching a civics lesson on forms of government, and maybe some or all of my students are joining virtually. I want them to still be able to follow along with what I'm doing with my classroom panel, and I can do that by sharing my screen using whatever web conferencing service that my school uses. So in this case, that's going to be Google Meet, and I've already got my materials ready. You can see that I have my PDF pulled up here, and we're going to start by going through the reading on who rules the different forms of government, okay? But I want my students to follow along, right? So I'm going to go into Google Classroom, and I'm going to choose to start the Google Meet that way. When you do that, it prompts the Meet app anyway, so you could go just directly to the Google Meet app or choose the meeting link in your Google Classroom. However you would like to do that is fine. So I'm in my civics class, I'm going to hit the Meet icon up in the top corner, and then it's going to start running that through the panel. Once that loads, then you're ready to join into the meeting. Little combo here. Notice no picture is coming up and no sound is happening because the panel doesn't have a built-in camera or audio. So how I like to tackle that so that I don't have to have an additional device or mic or something like that plugged in, I use my teacher device and also join in the same meeting using the same username, don't need two different accounts. I join here, so notice I've got my camera off and my mic on because my audio is gonna come from the computer. On this side, I'm gonna go ahead and turn both of those off just in case any feedback, anything like that, but you shouldn't have an issue. And then I'm gonna go ahead and join the meeting. Now that I've joined there, I'm gonna join here. And now my students will be able to hear me because I'll be picking up the audio through this. So you could use a webcam or a document camera that has a microphone or just an external mic instead of having to use the teacher computer. But just notice, I'm not even plugged in, okay? So this is the way that I like to rock and roll with it. All right, plugged in there, they can hear me. Got my Meet here. Now I need to share my screen so they can see everything. So up in the top, if you tap the screen, hit the three dots, and then choose to present screen. It's gonna tell you everybody will see what you're doing. I want them to, so that's fine. Start presenting. And then another reminder, yeah, start now. There, good. So it's telling me you're presenting to everyone. So now, whenever I go into my PDF, my students will be seeing this on their screen too. You can see that it's even showing on my teacher computer, so it's a nice little way to kind of see, hey, are they seeing what I want them to be seeing? And I can also see that my students are logged in here. I can check that through the Meet app on the panel as well. All right, so we're ready to teach. I want to take some of this information here and I want to put it in the whiteboard so that we can have a little discussion about this first paragraph of the reading that we're working through together. Okay, so I've got it now in my whiteboard. I can use my pen tools, any of the panel tools that I'm used to using because they can see everything I'm doing. That's the beauty of it. So if we're going through and we're talking about this first paragraph, if you've compared all the governments in the world, would you find one thing in common? Someone is in charge, okay? Important to know, regardless of the government, someone's in charge. I'll continue going through my reading and then we'll just move through the lesson as I naturally would in the classroom. Again, everything that I'm doing, they are seeing on their end. That's the beauty of the present screen. And while I was in Google Meet, this works in whatever web conferencing service that you are using. Another little tip for you, if you wanted, you could actually turn your camera on your teacher device if you choose to set up this way and have it turned towards you. And that way they'd get a little image of you and you presenting your screen. So that's an option if you want them to see you. So let's summarize that. Google Meet downloaded on the panel, start the meeting, present the screen, and now everything that I'm doing to teach, my students joined in the Google Meet will see on their end. As you saw, I had my teacher computer joined in that same meeting to pick up the audio. Notice it wasn't plugged into the panel, I was just using it for two different devices to have that sound. Again, you can eliminate having a second device as long as you have something for audio with the panel. So let's switch gears, but keep building on that idea of my students are joined in through Google Meet, I'm presenting the screen of the panel, but let's talk about engagement. How can that happen remotely? Yes, they can send in like a question on Google Classroom or submit their work and you could pull it up and share it, but the solution to doing that with your ActivPanel, Screen Share. That's an app built into your panel that you can use to have students remotely share their screen to your ActivPanel, regardless of them being in the actual classroom with you. They can even be in another state and still send in their content to your screen. So how does that work? As the teacher, I'm gonna open up the Screen Share app. And remember, because they're seeing everything that I'm doing on my screen, because I've shared it through the Google Meet, they can see this come up as well. They are going to use that code on their device to present to the panel. Now, there's different ways that they may be going about that depending on their device, and I'll show you how to kind of learn what you need to have them do. But in this situation, I have my student using the Chrome browser on their Chromebook, and they're going to use the Screen Share extension. They're going to enter in this code and their name, and then you can see there's my student, such a good listener, in the waiting room for me. So we are continuing this forms of government lesson, and we've gotten to the point where I want them to think about if they were in a plane crash on a remote island and them and the survivors are trying to figure out what type of government they're gonna have, what would they pick and why? So let's take a look at Patrick's example. So I click Patrick's name and I choose to share. Now on his end, he's selected that he wants to share his screen and allowed it. And now I can see live what Patrick is doing. So I can come in and read his response. He says, I think that the tallest person would rule because they can see most of the island. Thank you, Patrick. You and I might need to have a little intervention time to go back to what our topic on forms of government was. But all in all, you see here that this is a live document. If I wanted Patrick to come back up to that answer and maybe delete that, and let's talk together as the teacher and the student while everybody else can hear. And maybe I asked other students to chime in and give some feedback too. Patrick can actually adjust his answer, go to different screens, whatever it may be, because this is live, him remotely sharing his screen to the ActivPanel. To me, this is a game changer, okay? Because I get that great live engagement, even though they're not even in the classroom with me. So it does not require you to be on the same Wi-Fi network, any of that. Don't even have to be in the same building. They can remotely cast their screen in. So let me go back to screen share. A few things here before we close that idea out. There we go. In this waiting room, I could actually select up to 4 students at one time and have 4 different screens showing. They'll show in like a little grid setup. So if I wanted more than just Patrick's up there, I can absolutely choose for more students to share at one time. And if you are having questions about, well, how do my students share their devices? They don't have a Chromebook or they're not using the extension. If you choose this share.mypromethean.com in the lower corner in the screen share app, it will open up a web page that gives you directions on how you should utilize screen share on your panel and for your student devices. So definitely check that out if you have some questions about how to actually manipulate that in your classroom. But first and foremost, I needed you to know that this idea is out there and it works, and it's such a great way to bring engagement to the classroom regardless of being face-to-face. I really want to hone in and reiterate that once you choose to present screen to your students, everything that you do from there on the panel, they will see. So you saw me using other apps like the whiteboard, Capture, etc. You can do the same. And remember, if you want to have students go back and rewatch the session later, just hit that record button in whatever meeting service you're using. And you can use the same record function to create asynchronous lessons directly from your ActivPanel as well. In this example, you can see that I'm actually using the cable width that comes with my panel to plug into the computer. Now my device requires an adapter, so if you need one of those, you'll need to plug that in as well. So I'm getting my HDMI in for my image and sound. Put it the right way would help. There we go. And my USB in for touch. Now that I've got that plugged in, it's just gonna be a large display of my computer at the panel. Uh-oh, I don't see it. Don't forget, you gotta come and change your source. So I'm gonna go to HDMI 3. Regardless of what version panel you're on, you need to do this process. Now I can see this large image of my computer and I can manipulate from here. Okay, so I'm teaching my lesson and I wanna use a flip chart this time. We're doing a lesson on adding integers and it's designed in ActivInspire and not like Google Slides or something like that. But my students can still follow along remotely and watch me go through, use any manipulatives that I've built in. Whatever the lesson plan is, they can see it just like they would face-to-face. How? Using your school's web conferencing service. Again, I'm showing you Google Meet, so I'm gonna go into my Chrome browser and into my Google Classroom, or go to the Google Meet webpage, however you have trained your students to start. I'm gonna click the link that my students are going to join in with, and then you can see here that it's pulling up the same thing on my computer, and I'm gonna be teaching directly from here. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my camera off, but keep my mic on because my audio is gonna be pulling from the computer, again, because I'm plugged into the computer. So make sure that you keep that computer close in range, that way those joining virtually can hear you. All right, so we've got that ready. Go ahead and join in. And then when you are choosing to present your screen, so present now, it's gonna give you a couple of different options on how you can present. If you're gonna only teach within Chrome, sure, a Chrome tab would be fine. But since I'm gonna use ActivInspire, I'm actually gonna choose my entire screen, select it, share. That way they see all applications that I'm running, not just stuff happening in the internet browser. I'll hide that little message out of the way. And now they are watching exactly what everyone in the classroom with me is seeing, or if it's just me in the classroom, what I'm doing on the panel itself, okay? So I go through, I do my manipulatives, I can come back, I can check the chat and see if students have said anything there. So I'm running this like I would normally, except the chat is now my, hey, I have a question type thing versus your students raising their hands, okay? So let's have a little discussion about what you can do with this if you are not teaching students live on Google Meet. Well, plug your computer into the panel, turn on Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, whatever recording service, even the recording in Google Meet would work, and work at the panel like you would do in the classroom to make those recordings. That way you're not having to reinvent the wheel and use those whiteboards and all those things that don't work best for us to teach your lessons. You still have your hardware, make your recording with it. So as you can see, you can use your teacher computer and the ActivPanel plugged in with your cables to create great synchronous or asynchronous lessons for your distance learning needs. While we just showed you a quick snippet of using lesson materials, the ideas are endless. I especially love that I can teach with the same tools that I'm comfortable with, and I'm no longer trying to write with a mouse or show myself using an expo board in the background or those creative alternatives that we came up with when we didn't have access to our classroom hardware. So try it out and do a little test run before jumping into a strategy like this with students. You may also need to contact your school or district technology team to allow the use of these apps or to download them. And if you have any questions, give us a shout in the message thread or the chat feature.